The fact that Marc met in Palestine with Sufi sheikhs and went into Palestine when no American rabbi was doing that from a spiritual place, for me was a big, big sign that Marc is the real thing.
I don't always push what my identity is in terms of being Jewish or of even being a rabbi. Mostly I'm a professor of conflict resolution.
I've been in many wars in Middle East. In 1967, I vaguely remember, but 1973 I remember very much. And I remember the Lebanese war when I was doing my school in Beirut. So you know what? I don't want any more war. My dream, and I'm inspired by all those young generation to wake up in the morning and know that we're going to have a better day, a better tomorrow, with the Middle East free of war, of violence, more trade, better economy, so we can have more jobs for those young generations. And without doing this work and without building bridges between all of us, we can't have a dream.
I grew up only feeling safe with Orthodox Jews. I didn't even have non-Orthodox Jewish friends.
I was taught every one of the instincts of my community was telling me that Arabs were dangerous. Come my early 20s, and I start to sense that something's going badly. All the wars here and the occupation was having a corrosive effect on Jewish spirituality. And the height of it came in 1982 with the Lebanon war, and I was about 25, 23, and the massacre in Sabra and Shatila in Beirut. That was hundreds and hundreds of Palestinian civilians, families that were murdered. And this was a turning point for me, and I started to question a lot of things. That's when I started coming here on a fairly regular basis and starting to have a determination to reach out beyond the Jewish people. And with every step that I took out of this very, very closed environment that I had grown up with, my spiritual sensibility, my emotions, everything was changing. And I found myself in between peoples.
For me, I'm a very, very patriotic Syrian. In Syria, geographically, we are in the middle of the world. We have so many peoples coming across, and we, in a way, we learn. And we've been neighbors with Jewish all our life. So in our agenda also to have the culture of debate between us, between Syrian and between the other worlds and among all of us.
I remember one time going to a place called Neve Shalom, which was or even just beginning in 1982, in the early 80s. And it was a place in Israel where Jews and Arabs were living together. And that's unheard of here, that it was an intentional community of Jews and Arabs. And I went up, I just took a cab. This was all new to me. I had only had a Jewish narrative my whole life. I had every year, religiously, in the Passover season, saw the film with Paul Newman, Exodus, and that was my narrative of Israel. I'd never read anything about the Arab or Palestinian narrative. Suddenly, this was a new narrative.
And an Arab man took me into his home. I came unannounced, and he took me into his home and brought 10 of his young friends to sit with me in a room. It was the first time in my life that I had sat with Arab men. I was terrified.
And so before I know it, I'm in this small room in a very poor house with 10 Arab men. And I was shaking like a leaf because my whole life I'd been surrounded by religious Jews. And suddenly I'm with 10 Arab men. And I knew inside my heart what was going on in me, and I decided just to be honest about it. I said, you know, I'm scared, to the group. And they started laughing. They said to me, why are you afraid of us? You're the ones with the guns. That was my earliest Arab-Jewish dialogue. I was very young, I was very halting, but it was my first experiments with that process of listening and communication. And it was quite beautiful.
I did my conflict resolution degree from University of Toronto first, and I did like this conflict resolution. I like that people, they don't kill each other to get to a solution, to talk together and to have, we're a human being, have the brain. We're not animals to go kill each other. So this is how it gets me to like it. But later when I went to Fletcher, and I know about all these human rights things, and this is how I know that I'm passionate about it, but I really didn't know where to start.
I was walking on the ridge with the first Arab man that I had ever met as a friend, and he was looking at every single herb he knew. And I said, my God, they know this land. They understand this land. That's what loving a land is all about. And then I asked him a question. I said that's a lovely group of pine trees over there. And he just didn't say anything. And so I said, well, why are you uncomfortable with the pine trees? He said, I'll take you for a walk there. I'll show you a well. I said, what do you mean a well? He says, the well from a village. I said, what do you mean a village? He said, there was a village there. So I said, it's a group of pine trees. I don't see a village. He said, yeah, there was a village there. They put the pine trees to cover up the village. Why did they put the pine trees there? Because they drove the people out in 1948 and they wanted to cover up the evidence. He said, all along here, all throughout this region, you'll see pine trees and they're covering up villages that used to be there. And that was tough. I remember as a child that in first grade, the biggest source of pride was that I got to give a little bit of money to plant a tree in Israel from the Jewish National Fund. And I had that on my wall year after year, that I had planted a tree in Israel. And at 25, I discover that I planted that tree on top of a village. On top of a village where people used to live. And suddenly, I was part of the conquest. And I felt violated.